Welcome, dear students. In this session, I would talk about the 18th century grammarians. And I hope and expect by the end of this session, you would be able to understand the role that they played in the development of English language through the times. Well, the dictionary that Dr. Johnson had produced, what he had done for the vocabulary, was attempted for the syntax or for the grammar by these grammarians of the 18th century. So, because language is something that has multiple aspects, different specialists, people with specialized knowledge in linguistics from various aspects, were working on different aspects of language. So if Dr. Johnson did something to collect the vocabulary in the form of a dictionary, there were people who were more interested in grammar. These grammarians during the 18th century did the same to collect the rules in the same way for the grammar of English language. So, my dear students, during this time, books on English grammar had begun to appear in the social context. In fact, we would find from the very 16th century that some books were available. In the 17th century, also some books were compiled, and we would find some big names like Ben Jonson and Milton who played a role in this regard. However, most of these books that were written in the 16th and 17th century, they were quite different from the books that were written now in the 18th century. What was the difference in the nature? The books that were written in the 16th and 17th century, their main aim was teaching writing of English, generally written for teaching foreign language to, people, not, focusing on the local conditions and to be used, as a work or as a book that would be used to focus on the structures or the characteristics of a first language or a native language. So those books, the 16th and 17th century books, they were providing a basis for the study of Latin grammar. Only it was in the 18th century that for the first time the focus came to the English grammar. So, look at the social circumstances, the political circumstances that were working behind. Latin and French during the Renaissance period, they were of much interest for people. So, books would be written on grammar, but these books on grammar would be more about these languages so that people could, get a know-how of how to study a foreign language, how they could, consult these books in Latin and Greek languages. Now, for the first time, a native language, the first language of the people of this area was focused for the study of grammar. Even then, freedom from the notions derived from Latin were something to be claimed as a novelty and not always observed. So, now the situation was changing. William Lawton, who was a schoolmaster at Kensington, he wrote a book. He wrote Practical Grammar of the English Tongue. It was a famous one at the time. It was written in 1734. The book had 5 editions. The 5 editions show its popularity, Now, he was against those who have attempted to force, he says, our language contrary to its nature to the method and rules of the Latin grammar. So, he did not agree to the point that the rules of Latin grammar or any other grammar for that matter should be followed for English. He goes so far so that he says that the terms noun, adjectives, and verbs should not be used in their fixed way, and he substituted them with the names, qualities, and affirmations. Well, my dear students, there was a certain role that the compilers played during this time. The compilers of these grammar books, they were of a certain type, I would say. They only had the knowledge of the classical languages. They did not have the real knowledge of the linguistic structures of English. So, their knowledge was not sufficient to write these books as such. The second factor that we find is that they tried to keep the tradition alive. They were more interested in the classics. They would be always looking at the classic works and at the classic languages for, sample, for model. So, and they would try to apply the same model to English language. Basically, what they were trying to do, without understanding that the nature of English language is different from these classic languages, they were trying to ill-fit the rules of these, classic languages like Latin and Greek on an analytical language, on a language that has far less inflections as compared to these languages. And I would say that the decade beginning in 1760 witnessed a striking outburst of interest in English grammar. In fact, during this decade, we would see a lot of books came into the market, works of men with no specific qualifications. So, you can understand the quality of all this work. All these works were not in the mold of the practical, prescriptive grammar. They were, in a way, I would say, they were substandard. Overall, what I would say is questions of grammar and usage had become a matter of popular interest during this period.